Greetings, fellow bluegrass musicians. My name's Jeremy Fritts, and today I'm going to talk about some of the things that I've learned over the years as a guitarist. I've played in many different band configurations, including my band, the Fritts Family, over the years, but I've also in recent times started playing some solo gigs. And I've had great experiences doing this. I've found great satisfaction and good success. The audiences seem to enjoy bluegrass music and other traditional forms that are presented in that format as well. There are some basic pointers that I'm going to share with you today, some lessons that I've learned when it comes to putting together solo arrangements of traditional bluegrass music, though. In creating a solo arrangement of a bluegrass tune, an old-time fiddle tune, or anything of that nature, I have three basic pieces of advice that I want to go over today. One is to choose an optimal key, choose the best key for that format, to create overlapping melodic lines and textures, things that allow you to thicken up the melodies, and also to capitalize on all of the advantages that are specific to solo playing. As far as the key, I want to choose a key that allows me to use open notes to capture the widest range possible. That's not necessarily true with the key of G. I don't use a lot of open E notes in the key of G. I might in C, but even that's not as common. I certainly don't in D. But in the key of E, this is something I would use a lot. I also have the high E to work with. In the key of A, I also can use the E a lot, and also, of course, the open A on the fifth string. So I have lots of options for open strings to thicken up the texture in the keys of E, A, and D. And I can do the same thing if I retune into drop D by using the open sixth string as a D. So that all works really, really well together. Another thing that I've found to be helpful in solo performing, which is a little different than a bluegrass band actually, is the idea of several notes ringing at the same time. That might actually get lost in a band performance, but in this case it's super important. We're essentially taking the role of playing all the parts of a band at the same time, or at least kind of implying those parts. So we might do that by using chords, strumming chords as we play melody notes. Just doing a few strums, or you could play a whole melody. That thickens things up as well. But another technique that gives us that kind of connected sound, in classical music we often use the term legato, is to apply floating. Floating involves letting several strings ring at the same time, taking a linear melodic line and dividing it up amongst several strings. Here are a few basic examples of floating in a bluegrass setting. Here's a bluesy G run. Up the neck. And I could keep it ringing. Sounds very different. I could also take another well-known bluegrass guitar run, such as this one. Go up the neck. Things just sound a little different when they're spaced out like that. They're played on thicker strings, and most importantly, when we have more overlap within the strings, within the notes, so one note continues ringing while the other note is being played. Here are a few more examples of floating from my own playing over the years. Another piece of advice I have for you is to make sure and capitalize on all of the unique advantages that go along with solo playing. There are certainly disadvantages. If you make a mistake or forget part of the line, the audience is probably going to notice it more. You don't have a band to cover for you. For many people, there's an added degree of pressure knowing that the entire audience is focusing on them and them alone. On the other hand, there's a certain comfort in knowing that you can be spontaneous in your song selection, in your note selection, in the creation of arrangements. You can choose different chords right on the spot. You can change the tempo right on the spot. You can be incredibly flexible. And for many of us, we find this to be a comfort. Speaking of flexibility, one particular technique really comes to mind, and that's the technique known as rubato. Applying rubato basically means that I'm slowing down and speeding up, sometimes pausing on purpose. I'm varying the tempo to draw attention to certain parts of the melody or certain words in the lyrics. We have lots of precedents for this in bluegrass music. The example that pops up in my mind first would be Tony Rice's Freeborn Man. If you notice on Freeborn Man, the guitarist and singer usually plays by themselves at the beginning of the tune, and then when they lock into a steady tempo, the rest of the band joins in, which is much easier to pull off. It's very, very difficult for one person to be completely spontaneous and everyone else to be able to instantly adjust as they get new ideas. We're going to use that same approach at the beginning for the first A section of the tune that we're going to learn today, a tune called Golden Slippers. Today, we're going to play Golden Slippers in E. I would not usually play this tune in E if I were playing with a group. This is not the standard key, but it works very well, as we talked about, for solo playing because of all the open notes. Also, I would tend to play a little bit more linearly. I would not space the notes out as much. I might not choose floating as often. I would probably play it a little bit more like this example. Now, this next example is going to showcase the style that I think that you might want to choose if you're playing in a solo setting. It's going to have lots of rubato at the beginning in the first A section. Then we lock into a steady rhythm. It's also going to have a lot of floating, a lot of overlap, some chord strums, and of course we're going to take advantage of those open notes as we talked about. So we'll have several notes ringing at the same time. Alright, now let's slow that down. I have some tab that I'm going to show you on the screen, and we're going to walk through that entire solo at a steadier tempo and just kind of walk through the notes. that's it for today. I do appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you found these suggestions to be helpful. If you'd like to do more lessons like this, free of charge, feel free to visit my website, www.jeremyfritts.com, or type in Dr. Jeremy Reuben Fritts on YouTube.